Hi everyone, and welcome to this review note. In this video clip, we're going to be working with users and groups in Linux. So this is going to be for the users and group lab, and we're generally going to be working with lab 6.1 from your textbook. So first item we have to do is get started creating a couple of groups. So we've been asked to create groups called sales and a group called account. And in the process of doing this, we want to use best practices for group IDs. So in class, we were talking about the fact that normally with those groups, we start at a group ID of 60,001. So let's go ahead and get those groups created. So again, if you're not sure of commands, tab's your friend. We know the group, something to do with GR. If I hit GR and hit a tab, there's ambiguity there. I don't see anything. Tab the second time, we see all kinds of stuff, including group information. So we can see there's group add, group del, group mod. If we want to narrow it down a little bit more so we don't see as much information, I can even do group. Again, tab doesn't do anything for me, but second tab, we can see very easily group add, group delete, group mod. I'm going to do group add, and we'll do sales. And before I do that, though, I want to modify the group ID. So -G and then 60,001, which is going to correspond to our current best practices. Hit enter, and we should be good. I'll do the same thing for account. So say group add. In this case, the group ID is going to be 60,002, and account. Enter, we should be fine. Now, for some of the information, we want to make sure that the group accounts have been created in the group file. So how can we do that? Very easily, I'm going to say I want a tail /etc/group. And you can see down at the bottom of that listing that the sales and the account groups have been created. They have the GIDs 60,001 and then 60,002, just exactly as we asked. What about if we only want to show the output of the sales group? Okay, that's fine. In this particular case, I'm not really going to know where that is in the file, so I can use cat to do that. If I say cat and then /etc and group, we can see everything that's going to be in there. If all I'm interested in sales, we can go back and look at a topic that you studied a little bit earlier called regular expressions. So I'm just going to up arrow. I'll look at that command again. What I'm going to do is pipe the output of the cat command into grep, which is going to allow me to specify a regular expression, which will filter the output. Now, in this case, I'm interested in the sales group. We know that that's going to have the text string sales in it. So I just have to say sales. I'll hit enter. And we see the output from that command is a single line, which has sales. We can see that colored in, specifying that's what we actually matched with. And we can see that the group ID is 60,001. Terrific. So that shows us that we've got those groups created. It also shows us where we look in the group file, and we also can see that by using regular expressions, we can actually filter the output if we're interested in finding just a specific group in what could be a fairly large file with a lot of groups in it. Okay. So we got our groups created. Second step, we want to create some user accounts. So we want to do Bob, Betty, Bill, and Beatrix. All right, no big deal. I'm going to say user add. I'm just going to say Bill. That's really all I have to do. If I want to add any other parameters in, I can do so at this time, but we haven't been asked to do that. So I'll hit enter. I'll do user add for Betty. I'm going to do user add for Bob. And I'm going to do user add for Beatrix. No errors, so we should be good from that. Now, a number of different things we can do to go and find out information. First of all, our main file, as we know, is a password file. If I look at the end of that file to see what we've managed to achieve in there, I can say etc etc and password, and look at the end. The last 4 lines you can see are Bill, Betty, Bob, and Beatrix, who are created in there, and we've gone back to our original UID GID of 1000, 1001, 1002, 1003. as far as that count is concerned. So that's the output from there. If I want to go and make sure that their private groups have been created, again, I can look in the group file, so I can tail and then etc and group, and we can see down at the very end there, we once again have Bill, Betty, Bob, and Beatrix at GIDs 1000, 1001, 1002, and 1003. So their private groups have been created. We're good to go from that perspective. The other thing we're going to want to do is the shadow file, which is where all of the secure password and information is going to be included. So again, I can tail, and I'm going to specify etc and shadow. And my output from there, again, if we look at the bottom 4 records, are going to be Bill, Betty, Bob, and Beatrix. A couple things to notice from here. The main thing to notice from here is that the password is double exclamation mark. That means that the password has not yet been set, and therefore nobody can actually log on to this account at this time. So that kind of takes care of step 2. We've created our 4 user accounts. We verified that all of their information shows up in the files that keep track of users and all of the security functionality. Now, one other quick thing we'll take a look at from a home directory perspective. If I do a long listing of what is in the home directory, we're going to see that there is a directory for each one of our users. Once again, Bill, Bob, Betty, and Beatrix. And each one of those has security set so that only that one user is going to be able to get access to that particular directory. So that'll be their exclusive use area, kind of like when we set up home directories in the Windows side of things. So that takes care of step number 2. Step number 3, we want to modify some group memberships. So we want Bob and Betty to be in sales. We want Bill and Beatrix to be in accounts. Not a big deal from that perspective. Well, if you remember, what we have to do though is modify users. Okay, we don't have the option like we do in Windows, where with a group we can set members and member of. Instead, if we want to add members into a group, we have to actually modify the users themselves. Now, I'm just going to very quickly tail the etc group. Again, notice down near the bottom we can see sales and account. And with all of these accounts, the group accounts, that is, the only thing that's at the end of those lines is a colon. So we haven't actually created any members yet. In that group file, the members come after that colon. So they're the last field in the data record. So let's go ahead and get Bob and Betty into sales, and then we'll get Bill and Beatrix into account. So I'm going to say user mod Bob. And I'm going to do -capg, and the capg is really important. If we do a lowercase g, we're going to change Bob's primary group. So we want to add him to a discretionary group, capg. This is going to be sales, and this is going to be for the Bob user. I apologize, I put Bob in the wrong spot there. So user mod group sales, and this is for Bob. I'll say go ahead and do that. I'm going to do exactly the same thing for Betty and change that. Notice that I redid the command. I don't have the capability here to put Bob and Betty on the same line or in the same command if you wish and have it execute for both of them. Now, just to check our work at this point, I'm going to go back and look at the group. And if you look up to where sales is, you'll see that there's Bob, Betty. So Bob and Betty are now the users that are part of the sales group. And just to complete this, I'll also put Bill and Beatrix into the account group. So I'm going to say user mod capg account and then Bill. And then I'm just going to up arrow, change Bill to Beatrix. And I've now finished and got those 2 users into the account group. And if I go back and tail group, if you look up to the account record, you can see that Bill and Beatrix have now been added into that group. So that's basically it for group membership. Not a big deal to take care of that. The main thing we have to remember is that we use user mod in order to modify the user to get them into a group, not modify the group and get the user in. And the other big important thing is that the option is capital G, not a lowercase g. The lowercase g is going to change the primary group. So in other words, where it's like 1,000, 1,001 kind of thing, it'll change that to 60,001 or 60,002, which we don't want. And that's basically it. So that takes care of step 3. Step 4, the last thing we want to do here is we want to change the age of the passwords. So right now, users do not have any kind of a restriction on their password. I'll show you how we actually know that. I'm going to tail the shadow file. And when we look at that, the last 4 user accounts, the interactive ones for Bill, Bob, Betty, and Beatrix, you'll see that number 99999 in there. Basically what that does is it says the user will not have to change their password for 99,999 days, which is going to definitely exceed their lifetime. So the idea in there is no changes. That's not something we typically want to do from a security perspective. So there's a couple different things that we can do in order to modify maximum password ages. We can set a default. We're not really going to get into that right now, but we can set a default so that when we create a user account, it's going to have a default number of days. I'll show you that in a few minutes. But there's a command we can change after the user account's been created. In fact, there's 2 of them we can use. One is CHAGE, change. That is going to be changing the user account. If I look at the man page for that particular command, if we go down and start looking at some of the different options we have available, we can set expiry dates. We can make the account inactive. We can set the minimum number of password days. We can set maximum number of password days. There's a number of different things in here. But the main one I'm interested in is the one that's kind of right in the middle there, which is capital M or max days. So that basically says what's the maximum number of days before a user has to change their password. Now we're supposed to change this to 90. So I'm just going to get out of the man page. If I say I want to change, not an N, change. If I do cap M for max days, set it to 90, and let's say we pick Bob's account, I'll hit enter. If we go back now and tail the shadow file, take a look at Bob's account, and you'll see that 99999 is now 90, so we changed that to 90 days. I'll do that with Bill's account too, doing it the same way, and we go ahead and do that. You might look at this and say, man, if we mess this up, we have to do every account. Yeah, that's basically what you have to do. I would probably script that so I could go down and grab all the accounts based on some sort of criteria, as long as I did have a criteria that would actually fit. Okay. So change command. Now there's another command we can also use. There's an option in password command that we can use for this too. So if I say man and then password command, then if I scroll down here a bit, we'll see that there is an option which is X that sets the max days, the second one from the top on the output there. This does exactly the same thing as what capm does in the change command. So I'll quit out of here. I'm going to say password and then -X and 90, and we'll do that for Betty. And it comes back and says, in this case, it actually does give us some feedback and say that we did that. I'm going to do the same thing for Beatrix. And now if we go back and tail the shadow file, once again, we can see for those 4 accounts we created, they all have a maximum password age of 90 days. Now, just to show you something else we can do, I'm going to look at a file called etsy.login.defs or login defaults. This file is what the user add command uses in order to determine what it's going to do. And you can see that we've got right up at the very top here some password aging controls. So we can see max password days, min password days, how much of a warning time do we have, and what's the minimum password length. You'll notice that's where this max password days of 99999 comes from. If we wanted to set it so our maximum password age is going to be 90, we would simply change that 5 nines into a 90, save the file out, and then when a user gets created, it's going to have that 90 days. So although it's not part of the lab, I'll demonstrate that for you. I'm going to change less. I'm going to do VI instead. so that we can edit the file. And I'm going to scroll down here to where I can find that maximum password days. I'll go to the end of the line and I'm going to switch into my insert mode. I'll get rid of those other 9s, change this into 90, escape, write, quit, out. The file's now saved out. So if I go ahead and create another user, so I'll do user add, I'll create one for somebody called Harry. And once Harry gets created, if I go back and tail Etsy and shadow, we can see Harry down there in the bottom, and his maximum password age is already set to 90 days. So we don't have to go back and make any changes after the fact if we change the default in login.defs. Last part of task 1, something that's not on your book, but I wanted you to use the password command in order to actually set up passwords on those user accounts we created so that we can log in with them later if we need to. So for that, we just say password for Bill, hit enter. What password do we want? We'll use our good old standby secret 55. It's going to complain because the password's in a dictionary. Too bad, I'm going to use it anyway. I'll do the same thing for Bob. And we'll set him to secret 55. I'll do the same thing for Betty. I'll do the same thing for Beatrix. And while I'm at it, I'll do Harry as well. So password Harry, and I'll set him to be secret 55. Okay, that's it. All those passwords are set. Just to take a look at that, again, passwords that are encrypted are in the shadow file. So if I tail Etsy shadow, we can look at all those values that are down there at the bottom, that big long string of characters starting with the $sign right after the first colon, going all the way to the period before the next colon is, or even, well, the period in the first one anyway, is the indicator that we actually do have a password set. So that's it for task 1. We basically have our groups created, we have our users created, and that's a wrap for this video. So hopefully that was helpful for you, and we'll see you next time.